My name is Kat Bahama, and I'm a regional liaison and advocate with Mom Stop the Harm. And when I thought about a title to give this presentation today, Families on the Front Lines came up. And it is an allusion to the fact that we are engaged in the war on drugs, and that it's a war on our loved ones, and that in many ways we're all prisoners of the war on drugs. No? So I always start presentations from a very personal space. So what you're seeing is my son Joseph's baby shoes, and then his work boots. Atop the baby shoes are atop the urn that holds his ashes. And I don't know if you can read the text there, but I'll read it anyway. So my beautiful son Joseph was poisoned by fentanyl in August 2016. He was a loving father of 2 boys, a loyal friend, a beloved son, and a journeyman tradesperson well liked by his colleagues. He experienced trauma at a young age, and that pain led him to seek relief. Stigma reduces him to an addict. Compassion makes room to see his full humanity and makes room for empathy and understanding. So often, if the word addict or addiction is used, people's humanity gets reduced. So this is Joseph, and here he is as an 8-year-old. Here he is as a father. That's his little boy who has just turned 9 now. And here he is in his work as a tradesperson. And he's unfortunately almost a poster boy for the situation, in that, as mentioned, he did have trauma. And so as a youth, sought means to deal with the pain that he had undergone. And unfortunately, when people are traumatized, we traumatize them further with how we treat them. He was also a journeyman tradesperson and gainfully employed, and within that large cohort of people that are dying in this emergency that are males between the ages of 25 and 60. So unfortunately, I became a member of a group I didn't want to join, and that is a parent of who has lost a child. And it doesn't matter how old your child is, it's still the loss of your child. And that happened in 2016. And in late 2017, I guess I joined Mom Stop the Harm. So Moms Stop the Harm is a network of mothers and others, as we like to say in the short form. We've been impacted by substance use related harms and deaths, or we have a loved one who's in use or in recovery. These are what we're looking for in terms of ending the war on drugs, using harm reduction, recognizing that this is a human rights issue, decriminalization, etc. So we advocate to end substance use related stigma, harms, and death. And that little poster is an example of some of the stuff that we do in terms of advocacy, education, and support are kind of the 3 things that that we're focused on at Moms Stop the Harm. So these are all family members who've lost loved ones in this particular campaign that we did this spring, when it was the 5th anniversary of the declaration of the overdose emergency situation. But sometimes we do wonder if it's an emergency, because we can see the parallels, because unfortunately we're dealing with COVID, which has been dealt with in evidence-based way. So to talk about the advocacy, just at the front end of this, I'm going to share some of these things that are, this was a rally from 2018 at the legislature. Obviously, these are photographs of loved ones we have lost. This specifically is a group that was gathered together to remember our loved ones from the Fraser Valley. And so these photographs have been done in Vancouver, in the interior, in different places to draw attention, but also for us to gather and remember. One of our other advocacy campaigns involved creating these billboards, electronic billboards. These in particular were from 2020, and we had them playing up at the billboard at Tinseltown, and this has been adopted across the country. So we're a national organization, grassroots organization, and people participating obviously are family members, friends that have loved ones that they've lost, or have friends or family that are in still using substances or in active recovery. So what we call for, obviously, is reform of the current drug policy, which is not meeting the needs of the people, our loved ones, providing access to safer supply. And actually, I have a link. We have a workshop this evening with Corey Ranger on what safer supply is, because we are dealing with a toxic illicit supply, not people taking too much of a drug. And then the evidence-based harm reduction and treatment and services in all communities. The education piece, as I just mentioned, so we offer workshops and seminars in trauma, harm reduction, safer supply, overdose prevention sites, decriminalization, and most recently the Compassion Club model that the Drug User Liberation Front is working on. So we do work with different allied organizations and advocacy groups, the Canadian Drug Policy Coalition, Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users, and the BC Centre on Substance Use, Drug User Liberation Front, mentioned. And I'm trying to go through these slides quickly so that I can get to some of the other stuff. So in terms of supports, and I'm trying to get, oops, I'm going to go backwards here. So when you join Mom Stop the Harm, we have a public Facebook page, so we share a lot of information, articles, that kind of thing. So anyone can access that. It's to promote dialogue. Sometimes we have some very interesting dialogue, as you can imagine. But the place where people can gain a lot is through the private Facebook pages. And the one closed group that's accessible to any of the members, where a lot of people talk about the grief and the loss that they're going through, the frustrations they may have with services and systems that aren't supporting their loved ones, just the frustrations they have with their loved ones, as we all have. And then we have some specific groups like siblings. People don't necessarily think of that, but there are, there's all those brothers and sisters of people out there that I know. I have two older sons, and they feel the loss of their youngest brother, dramatically. But there's not a lot of services for them in the country they're living in. They're not here in Canada. So lots of opportunities online, and thank goodness for that. Given COVID, we've been able to do that. We also have a couple of streams of actual support. So Healing Hearts Canada is bereavement support specific to people who've lost a loved one due to overdose or other substance-related harms, because suicide is also in that picture when someone is dealing with substance use. That sometimes is an outcome. And in fact, one of our founding members, that was her situation with her son. And I put the contact for Healing Hearts in Chilliwack. It just started in September, I believe. I don't know if anyone from there has shown up in the meeting space here. But Krista Budd is one of the facilitators of that group. The group facilitators are people who have lived and living experience, who lost a family member, etc. And the groups are free. Hospice, etc. They have great programs in terms of bereavement. Unfortunately, with our situation, it's very specific. It's a complex, complicated kind of grief. Lots of people are, because of the stigma, are afraid sometimes to talk about why or how their loved one died, and we're confronted pretty much daily with the statistics in the news, etc. And as we know, the numbers for deaths in British Columbia is up to five a day. Over 7,000 people in the last 5 years in British Columbia, and over 25,000 Canadians. And just as an aside here, well, it's really not an aside, is our policy is creating, it's manufacturing intergenerational trauma for us right now. So we have the trauma of the immediate family members and friends. We have the trauma of the children that have lost a parent, and we know what that is like when a child loses a parent. That has a lifelong impact. The trauma to the first responders, and sometimes the first responders really are peers who are responding to overdose. So there's a huge amount of trauma related to this situation that I don't think we're really recognizing as one of the big issues to allowing this preventable epidemic to continue. So that's one of the programs, Healing Hearts. And then Holding Hope is another support for folks, friends, and family members who are dealing with someone who's actively having some issues with substances. And so there are groups across the country. Some of them are face-to-face groups. A lot of things had to move online because of COVID. But these are the opportunities that we have, and they really are. I've just speak to so many people who, parents, family members, who just don't have access to real information, evidence-based information on what's happening with their loved one. And this is an opportunity to really talk about some of those issues, and also get directed to appropriate resources that can answer some of the questions, because it's a really confusing space when you're dealing with a family member who's having these issues with substance. And I'm so glad that we started the Holding Hope, because I think that's a real big need for families and friends to be able to get some support, talk about what's going on for them, but also get pointed in the direction of some actual resources. So many initiatives have had such negative consequences in terms of how we deal with this whole issue. And stigma is such a thing, and it causes a lot of the harms that, and criminalization cause more harms than the drugs themselves. So there's some of the links for you. Ultimately, no more lives lost. I am a community artist, so that's just a project that I started after my son died. Positive resistance community quilt, and many people have contributed to it from across the country. But I don't want to stop the share. I just want to stop this. So I'm going to end this. Oh, there we go. There we go. And there's my, I just wanted to share this in terms of, okay. Oh, no, it wouldn't share. So I'm going to put a link in the chat box, because it just turns out that this evening that there's a workshop through Mom Stop the Harm, as I said, on safer supply. And I'm sorry, I just sometimes with Zoom, I feel like I'm alone in a room talking to myself. So do people have any questions, or I don't know if we have time for that in the process, Sabine?
Yeah, we do have time, and you're not alone. And we're all here wrapped. What a fabulous presentation. Thank you so much for sharing. There's just so many resources that you've shared with us. Does anyone have any pertinent questions they'd like to ask Kat right now? As you're all aware, we're recording, and also Kat will be sharing her PowerPoint with us, and it'll go up onto our website. So if you want to get another look at the slides, the contact information that's in that slide. There's a question there from Leslie. Do you act as a navigator for supports? Kat?
I'll think of that kind of as an aside. A lot of us, because there's various ways for people to interact with Mom Stop the Harm. People that are having an immediate loss are grieving, and harshly so, and rarely are going straight into advocacy, unless that's kind of where they are anyway as a person. And that sort of happened to me. I just am an advocate, so that's where I went. But with the advocacy piece, a lot of us have, especially when safer supply was announced, that is something that we did try to do with the systems that we're connected to, is to help people navigate that piece and connect with doctors that were supportive, nurse practitioners, etc., that kind of thing. So we do a lot of that directly and indirectly. So that is definitely part of what we do. And I should mention, I guess, that in addition to my work with Mom Stop the Harm, I'm the project coordinator with the Mission Overdose Community Action Team. So a lot of Mom Stop the Harm advocates actually, we encourage them to be connected to their community action teams, so that lens can inform the work, and they can act as advocates and push service providers to do some of the things that they might not necessarily always do. Yeah, so.
I'm not seeing anybody else's hands up. I think we'll move right along to our next part of the agenda, which is Wisdom from the Field. It is our peer panel, and I will turn this over to Leanne to share.
So you're only turning it over to me for about 5 seconds, and then I'm going to actually turn it over to Brittany, who is our facilitator and coordinator for drug war survivors in Abbotsford, and to Randy, Lynn, and Sarah, who I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, but if she's friends with Randy, then I already like her. So we're just gonna, but just before we get started, and Brittany, I just want to say this, and I hadn't said it to you to say, so I just want to sort of recognize out loud that there may be a number of people who are really personally touched by substance use on the call. And I just want to, like, as we're talking with folks, and when we're gonna sort of do a bit of an interview style here. And that's not an interview. We're just gonna ask a couple of questions and to our peer panel just to sort of get their reflections on their experience. I just want to put out there that everybody's circumstances are really individual and are within the context of their lives, and we as human beings who are surviving on this planet and loving people who may have problematic relationships with substances, it can be really, really overwhelming for folks. And sometimes we can say really, and I say we, and I mean me, I mean, we can say kind of dumb things or things that we don't mean to say to our family members. And so as we talk about this, none of this is like you're doing it wrong, if that makes sense. Like, people's reactions to substance use are normal, whatever those reactions are. And so we just want to talk about what might be more helpful, but this is not, please don't take this as a criticism by any stretch of the imagination. Everyone has their reactions to substance use, and we all say things that we don't mean, or we could have said it better. And we do this all the time. And so just really want to put it out there that, like, be kind to yourself when you hear maybe some of the things that you've said or some of the things that I've said. I plan to be kind to myself when I hear this, because maybe I know some of the things that I've said to my loved ones hasn't been that effective, but to just be kind to yourself about that. We can only know what we know. So just wanted to put that out there first. And I'm going to pass it over to Brittany and our Randy, Lynn, and Sarah, who are going to sort of take this away from me, and you won't hear anything else from me.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thanks, Leanne. Hi, folks. I'm Brittany Maple. I am the Director of Peer Programs with Abbotsford, Matsqui Abbotsford Impact Society, and the Program Coordinator of Drug War Survivors. I have had the pleasure of working with the Autonomous Accountable Peer Initiative in Chilliwack, who are a autonomous peer-led team that have been supporting folks in the COVID isolation center, as well as doing some exceptional outreach in the community to help get folks connected to vaccines and just do incredible work during the dual health crisis that we've been facing for the past, what seems like forever now.
Almost a year.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm going to let Randy, Lynn, and Sarah introduce themselves, and then I'm going to ask them some questions so that they can share some of their experiences with folks. So I'll turn it over to you for a minute, Randy. Or Sarah.
My name's Randy Lynn. I'm originally from Abbotsford, but I've lived here in Chilliwack for the last 5 years, I think, maybe 4. But I am currently living my experience. I am addicted to GHB, but I hope that anything that I share today, it helps somebody, and I'm really excited to learn more, and am super thrilled at all I've heard so far, because I've so many resources.
And hi, I'm Sarah. I have lived in Chilliwack my whole life, so pretty much born and raised here my whole life. And I currently am living in my addiction, I guess, as well. I'm addicted to meth, and as well. So yeah, like, I'm just really excited to see like that there's so many like resources I had no idea about, and hoping that I can give my input to somebody who's has a family member who's struggling with addiction, and maybe a better way to, go about like caring for them. Yes, in a non-negative way that might help them in there.
We are also all about breaking the stigma. And what we do every day is we're trying to prove that, can you hear me? Okay, I thought mine was on mute. Trying to prove that just because we have substance use in our life doesn't mean that we can't grow forward in life and become something in life. So that's what we do.
And I'll just say you do a wonderful job of that. I think that one of the things I'm so grateful for is that I get to see all of the incredible work that you folks are doing, and amazing ways of breaking down the stigma, because you are the front lines. And I'm so honored to be a part of that journey and watching Appy grow and do such beautiful things in your community.
Thank you, Brittany.
So I have 3 questions to ask you two. So I'm going to start with maybe what are some things that you have heard or seen from your loved ones, family and friends about your current or past substance use that you found harmful? And when you experience these hurtful things, how did they impact your use? And I'll just give an example. Someone that might say something like, my boyfriend would call me names for using, thinking that it would make me stop. And all it did was make me feel more ashamed. So then I used more. So can you maybe share some experience with it with us?
Okay, I'll go first. So I grew up in MCFD care my whole life. I was a ward of the court. So, well, like not my whole life, but pretty much my whole life. So I found when I was getting really bad into my addiction, they would tend to think that maybe moving me foster homes would help get break the addiction, or they would eventually put me on independent living, which was not so good because I was only 16 and it just didn't really help my whole addiction thing. And then also, like, as well as my brother, he just didn't understand like my addiction because he was like, we lived in different foster homes, so we were separated, and he just was very cold towards the fact that I was an addict and like stuck his nose up to me. Now he doesn't. Now he understands more now, but I mean, like at the time, it did not help at all. Not at all. It just led me down a path farther than I wanted to be on in the first place. So, but it's fine now. I think like it's all we've worked through it, and hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, it can help somebody else. I'm not. Yeah. I'm try.
Okay. And for me, I think that when I started in my addiction, I was probably about 11 or 12. And my parents were both substance users as well. And I think as they got clean or as they went through their own journeys, it was easy to look past what was happening right underneath them. A lot of times, like my dad is very much the don't lie to me and I won't give you trouble. But then when I don't lie to him, I'm no longer allowed alone in his house. You know, or like with my mom, it's a disappointment. And she's not I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. And you're like, oh, you know, and all that would do is make me feel isolated. Then I feel alone, and then I'm using even more, and I'm trying whatever I can because it's the thing that makes me feel connected.
Thank you for sharing those experiences. What are some of the things that you might have heard from loved ones about your current or past substance use that you found helpful and supportive? What made these words and actions so helpful?
For me, my mom started a drug user group out here called Change. The first time I connected with my mom ever was when she asked me to join her team. And here I am today, breaking barriers and moving it's because she stopped and just asked me to be a part of her solution in hopes that I would find mine. So. Oh. Your turn.
I just think that when my brother became, or like whatever, became more open-minded and got like more knowledge about addiction and how it is and how to be like, you know, how I grew up, and he knew how I grew up, but like it's just very different from the way he grew up. And so I think as he got older, he realized that the way he was going about it wasn't doing me any good. It was just causing me more harm. And he totally wrote me this long letter telling me all sorts of wonderful things that he felt about me and acknowledging all his wrongs and everything. I don't know. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was an amazing letter. And that was about 2 years ago now. So that's good. Now that I'm a little
Yeah.
bit shy. Don't mind me, but no. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for sharing those things, you guys. Those are very powerful. If you have some words of wisdom for the people here today who might be struggling with someone else's substance use, what advice might you give them around supporting their loved ones?
Don't give tough love.
I was just going to say the same thing. You don't have to love somebody to death. You know, you don't have to give them money. You don't have to do those things, but don't turn your back, and just always be there, because one day they might not be.
And it'll
And
be too late.
and you know, I see people out there all the time, and they haven't talked to their moms or their dads in years. And I couldn't imagine, like, if something happened to me and when I wasn't talking to my mom, and having to find out fourth hand, or, you know, through something else, or just getting that phone call from the hospital, and like, then it's too late. Otherwise, it's never too late. All you can do is give them your love. And, you know, I understand when we as addicts or substance users, whatever, when we're causing pain, it's okay to close the door and tell us to go and take a walk, you know? But my advice is to just keep the door open just a crack.
And maybe try to contact like other people who are going through the same thing as well, and maybe learn different coping mechanisms from other parents or loved ones who are dealing with, you know, active addictions and loved ones, I guess.
Yeah.
Making space to create connections.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to open it up if folks have some questions for Sarah and Randy Lynn.
Want to say thank you to both of you for being here with us today. And I totally agree with what you were saying regarding keeping the lines of communication open. And tough love is a sad, sad situation, and a thing that parents are still dealing with as a weighted, you know, and yet we know that connection is the most important thing. Unfortunately, I know of people who have had that situation, and then they didn't have a chance to reconcile with their loved one because they died, and so they're living with that. And that's what I was saying earlier, is there's so many there's so much bad information for family members about how to connect with their families. And yeah, having boundaries is important.
Yes.
And that's okay. And but we still love our family members. We still love them, and people need love more than anything.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
I was just going to say thank you to you both too for sharing, and that as a family member of two surviving addicts, and I can say surviving, or substance abuse users, my brother was in addiction for 10 years in Abbotsford, on the streets in downtown Hastings in the end. And he always says that I saved his life, and I never did. He saved his life, but I never shut the door. I never didn't show up. When I heard he was found on the streets, I'd go to the hospital and make sure he knew he was loved and that somebody was there waiting when he got out. When my own daughter went through her stuff, which is really, really hard when it's your own family member, your own child, and you just want them to get better. You just want things to be easier for them. So you beg, you plead, you do all the wrong things. And I learned that they were the wrong things, and I wasn't helping her. I wasn't helping her by telling her I was disappointed, not mad, all those things, even though that's really how I felt inside. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because it reminds me when my loved ones go through things, and I'm an outreach worker, so I can have all the empathy for all the clients in the world that I have. When it reaches home, it's you sometimes react as a mom, or as a sister, or as an aunt, or whatever your situation is. And sometimes it's hard to remember to put your cap on and no, don't judge and don't like meet them where they're at. It's harder when it's your own family members. So I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate the reminder because I try my very best to be that parent or that sister or whatever it is, but I'm human too. And I've had my own journeys. And so I appreciate you sharing. That's all. I know it's not easy. And you made me emotional too. So thank you guys.
The thing is that as an addict, it's hard enough when everywhere you go, the moment people find out that you're an addict, everybody wants to grip their purse, hide their jewelry, you know, so you deal with that all the time anyways, you know, and it's so hard then when you go home or to where you should feel safe and comfortable and they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it loud and in your face because they love you, you know?
I just want to thank you for sharing your message, and it's such an incredibly important message. I'm a parent of a substance user who also suffers from mental health disorder, and it's just so important that and it's continual work. I consider myself to be a family member in recovery myself. Addiction is a family illness, in my view, and I have to work at it constantly. That healthy way to communicate and stay connected. And it's hard. It's a continual practice. And sometimes I'm doing it well and sometimes I'm not, particularly when tired and so on. But yeah, you know, one of the other hard things to swallow is when our own extended family, you know, when it comes to, I'm going to get emotional here, but when it comes to family events and, you know, when you're feeling that stigma within your own family about your own loved one,
yeah,
it's doubly hard to deal with.
yes.
So we do the advocating and educating.
Thank you. We like to, for me, I like to, I'm in the process of starting a new drug user group in Chilliwack here, or we are. And I just like to remind people when it comes to their families and they're having a hard time with their families that, you know, it's just as it's hard for us out here, you know, like I've been homeless. I was homeless on the streets of Edmonton where I didn't know anybody. I suffer from mental health. But it's hard for us out here, but it's just as hard for our family who's watching us die helplessly. So I do feel you guys.
I just want to share, you know, I am also a parent of a youth who uses substances, and, you know, hearing the things that you folks are sharing and that you folks have taught me over, you know, the last while that we've been working together, all of it has shifted so dramatically how I parent my child, and how I've learned to connect with him, and just how important connection is to his survival. You know, it's shaken everything that society has taught me about being a parent. Sorry. And, you know, I'm so grateful that you folks are out there advocating and sharing this information with people, because it really does. It changes a whole family's lives.
Thank you, Brittany.
So I see there are lots of lovely comments in the chat. So folks, be sure that you read those.
Can I share something?
Yeah.
If you can hear me. I just thank you so much for allowing us into your space and sharing some of the challenges in your lives with facing addiction. Could you share, maybe, it sounds like you're in both of you have kind of a strength now from being advocates for yourselves and others. Do you find there's some foundation strengths that you're developing now that, and what might they be? Like for example, whether your self-worth or your self-esteem feels different?
Definitely.
What is
Like
that
for
for you?
me, I'm a lot more confident. Like, I'm a lot more confident in who I am. You know, I use substances. I'm addicted to GHB. Like, I live every day. What if I fall asleep outside and somebody thinks that I'm on opiates and they try to Narcan me? When you're on GHB and you get Narcan, it can cause either a stroke or a heart attack. So, you know, there's a lot of like, but now I'm confident when I go to the hospital or when I go and talk to a service provider, especially if I'm advocating, I know that we as people, we're all people. If you're here as a service provider to provide a service, I don't care what this person looks like, smells like, anything. You're providing the service, you know. So I feel good being able to look past now that I can kind of ignore the judgment now, you know. So
What a strength. Wow. And do you have anything you want to share as well?
Oh, sorry. I just most times I'd have really bad anxiety, and I'd have like almost like when I go into like big groups of people, it'd be hard for me. But this, I find that doing this has made it so like I'm willing to do those things and get over those things and stop having anxiety or feeling like people are judging me or looking at me. It's giving me more confidence and like, I don't know, more of a like, so.
Confidence. Wow.
this is
that's
Sarah's
huge.
first webinar.
Yeah, I'm
Oh
shy.
my gosh.
And I'm shy, so I don't know.
Wow, congratulations. No, it's so valuable to hear. And, you know, and there's lots of other kinds of addictions that people are relying on with COVID, you know, whether it's overeating or excessive Netflix, I mean, excessiveness in any capacity, because you're avoiding things, right? So I don't mean to compare that. It's the avoidance part. I'm sorry, I don't mean to make you feel that it's equal in comparison, because it has such an overpowering shadow with using substance, right? But still people are avoiding a lot. And I think people are getting more compassionate with the pandemic and that of,
I think so too.
yeah, how when you're out of control of something,
When you lose
trauma.
control of something, you lose control of something, and it's a hard thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Sarah's just going to step out for the washroom real quick.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, no, I get it. Whether it's overeating or using drugs, it's addiction is addiction. And
Still avoiding, yeah.
coming from somebody who has had probably every eating disorder you can think of, it is just as dangerous. You know, it really is.
Okay. Thank you.
Randy, can I ask? I just want to ask a question. I just want your input on this.
Okay.
Oftentimes we hear as service providers that, you know, folks really get sort of, you know, oh, you're using substances, oh, you must go to detox, you must go to treatment. And there's often this real strong push to get to treatment. And oftentimes we're sort of 600 or 700 steps ahead of the people that we're trying to serve. I'm curious about how that actually might land on you or Sarah or someone else you know who is using substances, where the push to go to treatment or the push to fix whatever's going on around your substance use is pretty heavy. How does that land on you?
I mean, thankfully, because of my current job position, I don't really have anybody. I mean, I have my family that pushes me to go to recovery. I'm not there, you know, like it's hard to explain. I had a detox doctor basically co-sign my usage forever. And due to my mental health and due to my ADD and just like everything else, he basically just said that if microdosing was legal, that he felt that the perfect amount of crystal meth and the perfect amount of GHB, that I could not only be a successful, but a very happy, successful, functioning human being. as opposed to this blundered, wreck of a human being I was 4 years ago. So to me, that as an addict, I obviously took that as co-signing every relapse I have for the rest of my life. But it is hard when, you're just, I was working at the hospital, and to the fear that somebody's going to find out that I use GHB, because I don't get wrecked all the time, like there has to be, not everybody can function and use substances. That's a fact. Not everybody can. But whether you can or cannot, pushing somebody to go to treatment in order to get your help is probably going to make them walk away from the help. So.
Thanks, Randy.
Yeah.
And I do just want to, because I recognize that we have a bit of a time thing, and Sabine will tell us when we need to stop talking. But I've actually had the pleasure of working with Randy and the rest of the ABBY team over the last year for the COVID response, and I'll get a little bit emotional here. I can't tell you how proud I am to see this, for it to be able to happen. And Randy and I have had lots of conversations about changes in her life as a result of doing this work without any, there's never been an expectation of change in substance use. It's just how it naturally has occurred has been pretty amazing to be a part of and to be a witness. And we are very grateful to the work that you've done. And that's all.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for you guys.
I also want to say, that it's really the biggest message that I would like anybody to hear is just that using substances does not make you less valuable, does not make you less competent and less capable. And that, working with these folks has really, highlighted how much more capable they are of a lot of things because they are substance users.
Thank you so much, Brittany.
What's the best way to get Chilliwack youth connected with you guys? Who are, in this.
Well, I can
Yes.
leave a phone number for myself. And would I leave it with you too, Brittany? Like your number too?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know if
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I can share my email in the chat, and folks can definitely connect, and I can, share with the ABBY team any opportunities to connect.
Perfect. What? I don't know. Okay.
So as Leanne mentioned, we have a number of other awesome sharings and resources and presentations today. I just echo what everyone else has been saying. It's extraordinary to have had all of you here to share. It's going to be weeks of processing how amazing these last 15 minutes have been. Thank you so much for being here and doing the great work that you do.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
To see lots more of you guys.
I hope so.
Jody, I'll just pass it on to you. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Sabine. I gotta pull myself together too. That was really, really impactful. Thank you. And this next part will probably seem a little bit dry in comparison, or maybe not initially. So I've been invited to speak today, and I'm here with a colleague who I'll introduce in a few moments as well, but I've been invited to speak today in a couple of different capacities. So I wear a few different hats in Chilliwack. So I am the manager of a number of programs at the Chilliwack Health and Housing Center with PCRS. And one of those programs is our CAPS program. So that's our Chilliwack Addictions and Prevention Services. It is the Fraser Health Outpatient Treatment Center for one-to-one counseling for substance users as well as substance affected. So just substance affected, you may have heard the term thrown around a little bit. That's just Fraser Health's term for friends and family, and it's often kind of a slightly misunderstood term. So substance affected does refer to the friends and family and those of you who are affected by substances, and that may apply for substance users as well, because like it was mentioned, they may also have had impacts of substance use from their own family members, from their parents or such during their upbringing. So we're going to provide the resource information for CAPS later on. And I know I've reached out individually in chat through this call as well to some of you. We do offer one-to-one counseling for friends and family with our substance use counseling team, as well as some group components. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, you'll have the contact information for CAPS later, but that is one of the hats that I wear. I also, alongside Sabine, coordinate the addiction task team here in Chilliwack, who is responsible for putting today's event on. So that's kind of another role that I play. And then someone mentioned, and this is a good opportunity as well, I think it was mentioned during the Mom Stop the Harm. She was mentioning about the CAT or the CAI. So the community action teams, that is money that's available through this overdose crisis to to communities to decide annually how they'd like to sort of combat the overdose crisis in their communities. So I just wanted to let you know, because we have a very small CAT committee here in Chilliwack, and we have no representation currently from like friends and family. So I would really love, as we're building our CAT team this next year, if anyone wants to reach out and be a part of joining the CAT committee, that would be great. You could email me and we can get that set up. We are meeting this week. The funding is available starting. So for January, we'll be on to a new round. So would love to get you involved in the CAT. And then with some CAT money, that kind of segues into why I'm here too. For the last couple of years, we have applied for and got some funding from the CAT money. And just before COVID happened, it was a focus on the hidden population of folks. So yeah, generally not the substance users that we're used to seeing on our downtown streets, but more the ones who are making up predominantly the number of folks who are dying of overdose in their homes. And again, it was mentioned earlier, generally high proportion of young males who are working in the trades and construction industry, who have families and children of their own. So we had applied for some money to kind of target and try to reach out to that hidden population. And then COVID happened. And at the same time, we realized really that the hidden population is hidden. They're called the hidden population for a reason. They are not easy to access. And we really realized that that shift to reaching the hidden population does have to come from the friends and family. So we kind of just under 2 years ago shifted to a focus on friends and family. So this was like a really nice fit for what we're doing and talking about here today. So I'm going to show, we started a video project during COVID with that funding. There has been 3 videos that came out through the summer, and we were hoping today to have our 4th video ready, and that has not happened because of the disruptions over the last 2 weeks in Chilliwack for us. So I don't have the 4th video. The 4th video is actually going to be the friends and family video. So I don't have that to show you here today, but I am going to show you our 3rd video. And I want to echo, I'm going to try to find this while I'm talking. I want to echo what Leanne said earlier too. And it's like, it is a challenge when we're putting this information out there and we're putting resource guides together and we're making videos. It's everyone's individual, everyone's journey is individual. And so some of what you're going to hear sort of in this video is one person's journey with substance use. And it may not speak to everybody. And so we try to get the messages out there that will reach the majority of people. but please, some of it, I'm just saying that because I think there's some contradictions in here, from like what Randy Lynn was saying just now around leaving that door open and being compassionate and not setting those really hard boundaries up of tough love. And I think you'll hear a portion of this gentleman's experience where some of that was what spurred him onto recovery. So again, really just want to recognize that everybody's journey here is different. And I'm going to try to hit play. Are you seeing my screen? Yes, perfect. So this is our third video.
Hi. You don't have to introduce yourself because we're gonna put your name up on the screen. So we will just jump right in.
Just, starting out partying as a kid and realizing somewhere in the mix of those first few years, hanging out with the friends at 17, 18, somewhere noticing the relief. I got some sort of relief with the drinking and the drug and felt comfortable.
Oh, no.
This is the checkers game where grandson and granddad will bond. This is the pool where cannonball records will be broken. And this is the kitchen where the new boyfriend...
Jody, you can skip that.
I know, you guys,
Beautiful.
my screen was over top of that.
I spent a lot of years right from 5, 6 years old of just being terrified of what people thought about me, fear of failing in life, fear of failing in everything. But that big thing about trying to please people and what people thought about me and just so concerned about being liked and not liked. I was at a time in my life where, it was just a once a month thing, or, once every couple of weeks. And it was just with the buddies, right? It was always a social thing. And, not overnight, but a slow process, all of a sudden I'm, locked in a room for days with the blinds closed and, peeking out the corner, right? Like, that's not an overnight thing. That's a process of getting from there to there. My experience with cocaine, was a real dark place, and I would just isolate, the things that I was doing, how I was hurting people and, losing jobs, smashing cars up. When I'm in the active addiction and stuck, I'm hiding it and, lying about stuff, keeping everything, as I think on the DL, right? This situation is more common than people realize it, There's a lot of addiction behind closed doors. This would have been a typical, I call them runs, just, I don't know how sometimes they last, right? It could be a weekend, it could be a week or two. But when I'm finally coming to where, here's an example, the car's smashed up, I pulled a no-show to work. I make that walk down the stairs and there's the, my wife and our firstborn, sitting there and just looking, and I'll never forget that look, the look of just disappointment. Can't even describe it, but just pain, and the pain, the guilt and the shame that I felt. And I can remember looking at that, assessing the damage, going into the bathroom, crying, but really looking at myself in the eyes, in the mirror, and saying, I am never doing this again, ever. And I would pass a lie detector test. I was convinced because of the pain I created internally and to the people around me, I'm like, I'm done. And doing that over and over and over again for years, and just, not understanding why, but trying a way somehow to figure it out, how to control it, And that's what addiction is all about. It's a delusion. You're in a lie. It was just the same thing over and over again. Eventually the doors and the phones, they stopped picking them up and then the doors were closed. So it was finally when my work said, hey, we love you, man, but we can't keep doing this. And they let me go. And then the family was gone. You know, the wife, you know, was off to her mother's with her children. And that's kind of part of my bottom of getting into recovery is, you know, they cut all ties off at one point. My first walk into recovery, honest recovery, like I'm willing to do whatever it takes, was everybody cut me off. Yeah. I think it's the hardest thing for a family member to do, but the best thing they can do is put up those boundaries. And, you know, like if you don't get help, whether it's counseling or get involved in a 12-step recovery thing, and there's other options, treatment, you know, it's kind of like if you don't get involved in something like that, like we no longer can have a relationship. You know, if I were to see, you know, a friend that, you know, I believe who they think they've kind of got it under wraps and they've got it hidden from people, you know, and I really care for this person and I know where, you know, this can take them if this escalates and they keep going, you know, I would approach them, you know, I guess, you know, I would, you know, whether it's a text message or a phone call or an email and say, hey, I was wondering when you have some time to have a chat, there's something I'd really like to have a chat with you about when you have some time, and start something off with that. And, you know, when I'm, you know, sitting down and interacting with this person, I'm going to start this conversation. I know for me, you know, I would start off and letting them know how much they mean to me, how much I appreciate them, and maybe even point out some things, you know, what they've done for me and some examples of a good person I know that they are, right? Like, highlight that stuff, who they really are. And because ultimately they're not their addiction, that's not their true self. You know, the word, they're not bad people, they're just sick, right? So, you know, to approach the person and kind of get that out on the table first and you know, and express that this comes from love, but get honest and say, this is what I see and I'm worried about your health. I'm worried about where this can go, and explain to them, you know, what you're seeing and then how it makes you feel. And I think maybe it's their move, right? And you know, hopefully you can feel it in your gut when that right time is, and maybe if there's an opportunity to present, you know, some help. But I think we've got to be very gentle of how we do that, right? If we just throw something in somebody's face, that's just that automatic to retract and get defensive. If the person's resistant, gets resentful, example, you know, F you, like, what are you talking about? Right there's my flag, like they don't want help. I can't make, you know, the old saying, you can bring the horse to the water trough, but you can't make him drink, right? But if there's like, yeah, you know what, I am struggling, and there's some open honesty about it, then you can work with that, And when I got into recovery and was maintaining sobriety and was working a program, everything came back like a magnet. Everything, the friends, the family, the job, everything came back. Like, it wasn't until after getting clean and sober where I realized how much these people cared for me. You know, like, I'm just like, man, I'm so happy to see where you're at today. And so, like, just the light in their eyes, and like, wow. And then kind of assessing, wow, like, you know, how much that I had hurt them. And but what a great feeling it is to see, you know, like how happy people are, and I mean, the relationships, from my experience, you know, built, trust is regained. Yeah.
So we can see, like, with that video, some of the complications or the contradictions, I think, even, you know, amongst ourselves, and like the question that Leanne asked earlier around, you know, our mindset around having and wanting to fix people, or laying out expectations or boundaries around them going to treatment to get help. I think it's such a quandary for us. I think even amongst, you know, in their own journeys too, you hear the contradictions, because everyone's journey is different, and what propels somebody to make change might be different. What someone's definition of being okay is going to be different as well. You know, our work is like, our substance use counselors have that challenge in terms of having to balance between treatment referrals and just coming alongside people basically in their journey. You can see where the stigma kind of gets revitalized every time through some of these contradictions as well. So I think like the bottom line is that it is an individual journey, and that coming alongside, and we've heard this before already this morning, but those individuals are the ones to guide their journey, and all we are kind of these active participants coming alongside our loved ones in where they're at. We don't have mandated service mandated treatment here in BC, because for the most part, we know that it's not a successful way to go about things, because the individual has to want intrinsically to be able to be there and make those changes. And that presents a huge challenge, I know. And when you sit down or talk to any parents of young people or folks who have been going through it for 20 years, there's nothing more than they would want than mandated treatment. And yet I think we need to look at the deeper aspects of this and look at the importance of connection, and look at the root of the trauma and things like that. So I have one more thing to kind of segue into. So that was kind of our last year's CAT money that made the videos, and we have one more being finished up. This year's CAT, we actually hired a half-time substance use counselor, and I'm just trying to find where my slideshow might be. There we go. And so we had a bit of an initiative going on. I'll talk about it for 2 seconds, and then I'm going to introduce you to Casey. Slideshow, start. Let's go from here. Okay. So we did have, over the last 6 months or so, we kind of looked at friends and family and wanted to know how we could kind of help. So these are a few of the ways that we've addressed this topic over the last year or so in Chilliwack. So that was identifying resources that are available for friends and family who are living in Fraser Valley and Chilliwack specifically. There are weekly groups for substance affected individuals. There's that term again, friends and family. Providing naloxone training to friends and family, and producing the resource guide. And I can't see if there's anything else underneath that. I'm gonna just click through. So yeah, just again, quite quickly, starting in May, we put back in person our evening CAPS Friends and Family group, which Casey was a part of co-facilitating. And then we also did like an outdoor naloxone, a parking lot naloxone training blitz throughout the summer months. That resulted in us training 72 friends and family and community members through that summer blitz in being able to administer naloxone. In September, we added a daytime friends and family group as well to that. And then we are in the very final stages of putting the resource guide together. So it's kind of in final editing mode now. And I'm going to pass you over and introduce you to Casey Nally Ratcliffe, who is, she's a half-time Indigenous wellness counselor with PCRS. So she does have a caseload of substance use counseling for our urban Indigenous folks. And then she's also, like I said, half-time been working on the Friends and Family project here. And I guess, I just want to add like the challenge, obviously we had challenges with COVID and hot weather and all of this sort of thing. I also think that there's still so much shame and stigma involved for our friends and family, that attending a support group in a group element isn't necessarily where a lot of them are at. And so when we get calls to the CAPS program for counseling, we offer counseling or group. Almost 100% of the time, those families are choosing a one-to-one individual component. And hopefully be able to move more into a group component. But for a number of reasons, the uptake for our friends and family groups did not pan out over the last 6 months in the way that we hoped it would. look at that a bit further. So here is Casey. Hello, Casey. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Casey. I'm sorry in advance if you hear background noise. I have downstairs renovations happening right now because we have a leak in our roof, and I have a very scared dog beside me. So I'll power through as best as I can. So in addition to facilitating the groups and the offhand services such as the naloxone training, we did produce a resource guide. As mentioned, it's in its finishing stages, but we still want to touch base on the key concepts that will be featured in this guide. So starting off with the beginning of it, although the guide is meant for everyone, we did want to hone in and emphasize that we are trying to address the family and friends of our hidden population because as statistically maybe mentioned here and there, a majority of our passings from the opioid crisis are happening in just everyday residential homes. I guess I give a huge motivation for this guide is kind of creating a communication piece to, I guess, hopefully effectively create means to connect and provide assistance to these to our hidden populations. So starting with their friends and family. So under that same theme of connecting with the friends and family of our hidden population, our guide will kind of go into substance use stigmas, as it's become somewhat apparent that communication about substance use are not occurring in our homes. So stigma around substance use is probably a good reason why it's not. So the guide will just kind of cover what is stigmas about substance use, and then what are actions that friends and family can take to not only stop, but also prevent the ongoing trends of that. So in the continuum of educating oneself about substance use, our guide will then just kind of briefly go over the different types of substances that are in circulation, as well as indicators of what active substance use might look like. And this is not to create like experts on substance use, it's just kind of to build a personal confidence and for friends and family that want to communicate about substance use with their loved ones. And I guess build a strength in knowing that their knowledge and their input is just as important in this process as their loved one is. So moving on, not to make everything about substance use, our guide will cover a huge portion about abilities and skills and practices that friends and family can use to ensure that they're practicing self-care. So that'll include the introduction of what are healthy boundaries, including self-evaluations, and as well as safety planning. And then just to kind of wrap up and refocus our guide, we do touch a bit onto the opioid crisis. So that includes the introduction of the fentanyl trend, kind of a brief history of how did we get here, essentially. You know, the opioid crisis did just pop out of nowhere. There's a few reasons historically of how we ended up here. So I'll just go over that a little bit. And then just the public safety tools that we have on hand right now to help us with this opioid crisis. So what is naloxone, the lifeguard app, and just additional harm reduction practices. And then, as mentioned, we don't have the guide here with you, but we want to make sure that before we left everyone today, we did share that there are presently some friends and family groups that are actively going right now. So just at our CAP center, we have our friends and family group at least twice weekly, and then in Abbotsford they have their loved ones group, which occurs every Thursdays. Fraser Health, they have a few ongoing services right now. So they have their wellness planning service, which focuses on practice of self-care. They have their family connections, which emphasizes on how to safety plan between family members, friends, and their loved ones. And then their education series, which is kind of like a webinar where you have a set Fraser Health professional that just addresses a particular topic at hand. So registration for that is just with the number featured there. And then I like to include Al-Anon. I know that it's traditionally alcohol based, but with the ongoing trends of substance use, specifically the opioid crisis, they are trying to adapt a little bit more around that. So I would include them as a known resource. And then for those that want just online resources, we have Moms Stop the Harm and Families for Addictions Recovery. These are two very informative sites, I would say. And then just for virtual meetings, you have the Smart Recovery. And then I know they don't, Leslie can confirm, they don't have anything specifically for friends and family, but I just want to make sure that we have, given that we are in Stolo Nation, that we have cultural practices being shared in the case that we have individuals or family and friends that need that specifically. So I think that's all I really want to race through. That's a little of a PDF featuring our groups that we are holding on a weekly basis for the time being. And then just on hand on naloxone training for anybody that's still interested. I think.
Yeah, that's great. And so, yeah, this last slide again is just our sort of Fraser region, Fraser Health outpatient substance use, who holds those contracts in places outside of Chilliwack. And I know Jasmine is here today. I saw her name pop up. She is the Agassiz substance use counselor.
Hi everyone, Jasmine here. But thanks for putting the information up there, Jody. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah, and then I'll just leave this up for 2 seconds here, but I think Sabina is sending the slide show out, so you'll have all of these contact information when it comes through your email. But this is our PCRS CAPS program in our office, and some phone numbers and email access at the bottom. So thank you guys so much for the time and space today. Thank you for being here and for also sharing your stories.
Thank you, Jody. Yeah, we're not going to be sending stuff out via email. It's just all going to be on our website. And Ed, if you don't mind putting our website into the chat box, I think early next week, everything will be up, and all the presentations videos will all be linked into our website, so you can take a look at anything that you've seen here today through our website. And then I think you alluded to our next, we're not able to have a presentation on the Fraser Health Mental Health and Substance Use Family Support Services. Monica Parker is ill and not able to do a presentation, but she did send this digital version of their program. And I believe this is the phone number that you shared also. Yeah, so it's a good segue into just, there is a pamphlet that will also be on our website connected to the events of today, of our event. So I just wanted to let you know that will be available to you. And we, I believe, are ready to move on to our last presentation of the day. Dr. Amy Salmon presenting on the Fraser East Overdose Response Project.
All right, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen and bring our slides up. 1 second. Okay. Not wanting to, there we are. Okay. Oops, there we go. Okay, thanks for your patience with that, and also for the invitation to come and speak with you today and share our work. I just want to acknowledge, first of all, that I'm presenting today from the Center for Health Evaluation and Outcome Sciences in Vancouver, which is on the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I would also like to acknowledge the member of our team who has been the heart and soul of this project and the collaboration over many years now, Jennifer Hawkins, who is on the line, and I'm hoping we'll be able to come and answer any questions that you might have. So this is an update to our project. I think some of you may recall our presentation from last year where we shared the results of our interview-based work with that focused primarily on the experience of people with lived and living experience of substance use and addiction in the Fraser East region. I will explain. So today we're going to talk a little bit about a new set of data and some very early, hot off the presses findings from our research with loved ones who are at risk of an overdose in the Fraser East region. So I'm presenting on behalf of our team, which includes all of these wonderful individuals, including representatives from the city of Abbotsford, as well as formerly the city of Chilliwack. We want to thank and acknowledge the city of Chilliwack for the warm and welcoming support that they provided to us from at least since my involvement with the project that began in 2018. Our co-investigators include scientists here and at the BC CDC, Jen representing Fraser East, Dr. Steve Iso from PCRS, as well as our team of peer researchers, and also want to offer special thanks to our initial team members. So our project is a community-based participatory action research project. That means that the focus is on localized approaches that include and empower communities at a really grassroots level. So one of our key motivators behind this project, you may remember that we spoke to this a bit last year, was on generating research evidence that is directly applicable and meaningful to the Fraser East region. And we've been motivated by that because the bulk of the research evidence for overdose intervention that we have available to us from the BC context, as well as within Canada and internationally, comes primarily from highly urbanized settings. So we wanted to get a closer look at what specific risk factors for overdose might be present in semi-urban and rural areas and in the Fraser East, and in particular to look at the individual experiences as well as the broader environments that can create or exacerbate risks for death due to overdose when people are using alone and indoors. The goal here was to be able to identify supportive interventions that could be identified. So So in the first set of data that we reported on last year, we, with support from the Chilliwack Social Research and Planning Council, were able to highlight, among other things, the importance of friends and family systems, both in helping people to keep themselves safe from overdose, as well as sometimes the role that loved ones can have in increasing risk in death due to overdose. And so we wanted to understand that better. So far we've conducted interviews with 22 friends and family who are connected to people with lived and living experience of substance use and addiction in a variety of ways. You see those here. But I do also want to mention that this is work in progress. We value the opportunity to come and present to you in the early stages of our analysis and to have your feedback on what we're learning. But we are still recruiting and inviting interview participants. So if you have an interest or would like to connect with us around participating in this project, you can connect with me or connect with Jen. So what I'm going to share with you next is what the data is telling us so far about the stressors that are experienced by family and loved ones that lead to crisis points with heightened risks. So just under half of the people that we interviewed, so of the family, friends, loved ones, had lived through the death of a loved one, but there were a number of crisis points that people identified. So that included experiences of complete and total burnout, breakdown in relationships, personal relapse, sickness, isolation, and lots more. And those risks weren't separate from the person who's using substances. Rather, they are complex, interfacing, and intertwined. So let me take you through some of what the data has been telling us so far, right? So first of all, there are a number of ways in which people found helping and healing on their journey and in their ability to support their loved one who is at risk of overdose, right? So people talked about a number of different significant relationships in their lives, including with people in their families, communities, friends, as well as their relationship with God and spirituality. Lots of different ways that people were finding their ability to define and then lean on those important relationships. They were able to then sort of leverage the power and the capacity of these relationships in a variety of ways to help them when they encountered big stressors, right? So here, what we're really focused on is the idea that, as we all know from our own relationships and in our own experiences, including many of us I know here who've struggled with substance use ourselves or supporting loved ones with that area, relationships are complex. And they're never just one thing. They're never just helping or harming, right? But when we have resilience in our relationships, those resilient relationships can help us to buffer or to navigate the life stressors that we experience. So here, I think one of the things that I would like to point out is what I mentioned on the previous slide, that we're focused on risk that's related to using alone indoors in a private residence and how that puts people at much higher risk of dying from an overdose in the current context of the fentanyl poisoning emergency. Here, I think what we're learning from the people that we've had the great good fortune to learn from in this piece of our project is that when we're focusing on how do we prevent using alone, we may be focused on the wrong thing. The thing that we should be focused on, this data is telling us, is how it is that people come to be alone and what it means to be alone. And it's not just about that individual doing a particular behavior in a particular moment, right? That instead, that it's often these stressors that result in fractures, tensions, and strains on relationship that can bring people to be alone. So we found two broad categories of those stressors, right? So including experiences, and then secondly, people's feelings and their perceptions. So experiences here highlighted for us include things like negative system interactions, strain on relationships, the personal harm, and other life stressors that people are trying to negotiate or navigate through at the same time they're supporting their loved ones. And then these feelings or perceptions that people talked about as stressors. And sometimes these are in response to specific events. And sometimes these are just the burdens that people are carrying, right? So that feeling that not only is the person at risk of overdose feeling alone, so are their loved ones a lot of the time. And I was hearing and appreciating from Casey's presentation just before all of the ways that shows up for people and the ways that you reflected on the shame and stigma that people carry often, and the tremendous pain that results in. People talking about feeling just exhausted, uncertain, and guilt. Here, I think so what we're hearing from people is it's those stressors that then can rub away at the resilience that they find in their relationships to bring them to crisis points. So we talked about different crisis points as points of fracture, and we have over and over again are emerging as people are talking about their experiences, these significant stressors leading to a breakdown of that relationship in some way resulting in people coming to be alone. So people talking about feeling overwhelmed. I also wanted to highlight here another word that's come up quite often in people's accounts of their experiences. We talked about shame, we talked about guilt, but also embarrassment. And people talking about feeling embarrassed that they had lost someone even to an overdose, and that feeling that results from that embarrassment of not being able to open up, not being able to be honest, people speaking about the loss of their loved one, in this case, the woman of her husband, as a dirty little secret, right? How painful. All other stressors talked about the complexities of their family and friend support network. Again, just like people with lived experience shared with us when talking about their own risks for overdose or reasons that they might choose to use alone. We saw a very strong parallel in the accounts that were shared with us from friends and family, as well, is that their family members can be a source of support and also a source of strain. And often those had to do with one or two or sometimes both things happening. So different approaches or perceptions of the issues that are surrounding the situation that the family is dealing with, right? So, and then also past drug use in family and friends that also caused harm was another thing that people were speaking to a lot. And then when people get to that point, of reaching their limit, one of the most significant stressors involved experience of living someone and the burden of decision-making and trauma that can come during very specific crisis points, right? So here's in the words of a mother who's been supporting her son, who's currently in a supported living situation. She said, for example, as a mom, she can navigate the disability, she can navigate the illness, but she couldn't navigate the drug use and the chaos that brings, and the distrust and the dishonesty, theft, manipulation. Those were the kinds of things that brought her to her breaking point. So I think this is a really important and instructive reminder for those of us who are in services to think about the things that bring people through the door, right? And to be on the lookout for those points of tension and those first points of rupture. When a loved one is saying, I just can't do this anymore, then this becomes a really important time for communities to wrap their arms around folks in their struggles, to enable them to keep a positive focus on a relationship where that's possible. Sometimes it isn't, though, and people spoke to us about trauma and loss and the experiences of harm that they experience supporting a loved one, and then of course the negative system interactions that I know we've heard about a number of ways today, and I really want to appreciate the efforts of the frontline providers in the room who are working every day to make sure that when family, friends, loved ones, and people who are struggling with substance use walk through their door, that they can have a better experience. Sort of in that way, we can see a number of ways that both frontline providers can be community champions. So when we asked folks to talk to us about what works, they talked about seeing evidence when somebody goes above and beyond for them, that somebody really cares, that what seemed to matter most in their own lived experience in their supportive relationships was that feeling that you're being understood, that you've got somebody that you're connected to and that you're on the same journey with, that although you might be fighting a big fight, you're not necessarily fighting with everyone around you, right? This idea of compassion and helping others as an alleviating factor. And the next piece that we're looking into importantly at the moment is sort of this idea of what it means to set boundaries and how people work to preserve their well-being by setting positive boundaries, but trying to differentiate that of setting a positive boundary to preserve yourself and your well-being or to preserve the relationship in ways that doesn't result in somebody being alone or being at risk. So that very briefly is an update of where we are at the moment. I mentioned the future exploration around sort of looking at what our data has to say about boundary setting, beliefs surrounding tough love. We're also looking at differences between the nature of the relationship and the kind of experiences that people have, trying to support folks to reduce their risk around overdose. And I'm just going to leave it there. I realize that was moving very quickly, but be happy to answer any questions that you might have.